Mr. Raskin for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I am indeed the congressman from NIH, from the 8th Congressional District in Maryland, and the NIH is very much in the heart of my district. And being the representative from this area, I know intimately and I keep close track of all of the research that's going on into leukemia, lung cancer, colon cancer, cystic fibrosis, asthma, bulimia, drug abuse, alcohol abuse. I mean, it's just extraordinary the range of scientific inquiries and endeavors that are taking place at the NIH. But I also want to speak as a survivor, and I wasn't aware of a survivors caucus, but I would be delighted to join you, Mr. Desagnes, in that. I had colon cancer back in 2010. I was then teaching at American University Law School and as a state senator. But I read an essay by Susan Sontag in which she said something that was very poignant, which is that everybody's born with two passports, a passport to the land of the living and the healthy, and a passport to the land of the sick. And all of us are going to have to use both passports at some point in our lives. What's striking to me, though, is that those people who've gone through it or have had an immediate family member go through it look at something like a proposed $6 billion cut in the NIH medical research budget and are horrified by it. I mean, are just astounded. And then people who've not been directly touched go about their business. And so, but my question for you, Mrs. Carr, and thank you for your wonderful testimony, is basically how do we maintain the consciousness of both passports and the coexistence of these two lands? I remember when my chemo ended, the very last one, feeling as if I had suddenly returned to a place from a very long, harrowing trip that I'd been on. But so how do we make that consciousness permeate the country?
I think it's hard. I mean, I can tell you, I didn't know a lot of these things before I had to know them. I didn't know that pediatrics only receive 4% of funding. I didn't even know what DIPG was. So I think having more people who have been there trying to resonate their experience to those, and hopefully people hear and they feel sad and they feel sorry, but hopefully they really think about that impact. And I think having these three here talking about, there are benefits to research beyond just saving people right now. I mean, these are huge financial implications and there's so much there. And I tell people, you don't get it until you get it. Unfortunately, though, you don't want people to join that club. Right. So I think as many advocates as we can build for helping to share our story, because again, there are only so many of us, thank goodness, that have lost children, and only so many of those that actually want to share their story. So creating more advocates amongst people in this room who can then, do that and help us in those efforts.
Yeah. Let me ask a question of Dr. Beckerly. One of our great American aphorisms, I think it's attributed to Ben Franklin, is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I know I gave a little speech yesterday about Alzheimer's disease and did some research and found that we spend 250 times more treating people with Alzheimer's disease through Medicaid and Medicare alone than we do on researching to get a cure for Alzheimer's, which is now beginning to spiral out of control. I mean, the jumps in the number of people who are suffering from Alzheimer's and who die from Alzheimer's are extraordinary. So talk, if you would, about how we get people focused on prevention rather than just spending a lot of money after the fact trying to mop up.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, and I think the time is right to begin to really focus on this area. Clearly, we need to continue our investment in the development of new treatments for people who are already affected by cancer, but we now know that probably about 50% of all cancers could be prevented, and this is by cessation of smoking in some cases, and also understanding of inherited risk and screening and early detection that can either improve cancer outcomes or prevent the disease. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we now have enough scientific knowledge that it is time to really put some dedicated focus on cancer prevention. One of the areas of the Blue Ribbon panel was a focus on what we call precision prevention and capitalizing on our deep knowledge about cancers that run in families. We know that there are at least 50 different types of inherited cancer. And if we could identify everybody in the country that had that inherited predisposition and screen those folks, we might be able to prevent them from developing untreatable disease. In the case of Lynch syndrome, which we've heard about from Stephanie, Stephanie, right? Yeah, okay, good. We know that there are about 1 million people in the United States that have Lynch syndrome, which causes a predisposition to colorectal cancer, uterine cancer, and a number of other cancers. Only about 5% of the people who have that syndrome know they have it. So what that means for them is they're doing the right thing, going and getting colonoscopy at age 50, but because they have Lynch syndrome, they're developing colon cancer way before they're starting their screening. So if we know who is at risk, we can prevent those cancers from developing in the first place. Save lives, save money.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.